We are.
Yeah, lovely. Come on in, everyone. You know the drill. Come on in over from YouTube from that excellent video that everyone watched and loved from the wonderful Michelle from Dora Does, who is joining us. Here we go. I'll click the right button and hit.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You are welcome.
There are so many comments along your video on YouTube about like who knew ribbing was so interesting to everyone.
Oh, it's my jam, ribbing, and actually I have to show you this before we get any questions. So there was some questions earlier because I've been watching the summit all weekend and I've been loving it, but a couple of people asked about big hips. I'm like a classic pear shape as well, so that like set my spidey senses going, me, I'm the same.
Here we go.
So my solution, so this is a cardigan pattern of mine. This is not blocked yet, but this is a remake of an old pattern which I've just updated called the Happy Days cardigan, and it's quite cropped. So for me, and it's the same with sweaters, I love a cropped cardigan, but sometimes if it just stops and is quite boxy, your waist disappears. So I add ribbing. So in this cardigan, there's no shaping in the body, but I've added ribbing, which kind of pulls it in there. So it's exactly the process that I used in the video. I think this might be single crochet rather than half double, but it's the same process. I've got slightly different colors on the cuffs, but like the way you can use ribbing to add shaping without stitch counts, without like if you've got a very simple, you know, your kind of two rectangle front and backs, it's a really nice simple way to add shaping. So I thought I just grabbed that. It's been finished for ages and I really do need to block it, but yeah, so I just wanted to mention that while it was fresh in my mind.
Definitely, yeah. Ribbing, I think ribbing is really underestimated, isn't it? Like it really can add, and I think it's a great thing for beginners to think about in their projects, because like you say, you can make items that don't have lots of shaping in them, but then you can make them look shaped by adding your ribbing and messing around with your ribbing, can't you?
Exactly. And it's like for cuffs is brilliant, especially if you don't particularly want to shape a sleeve, but you want it to cling to your, and often with different sizes in garments, the tapering on a sleeve is quite different with different sizes, because you know there's not as much variation in wrist size as there is in bicep size with different sizes. Yeah. So you know, when you've got a large size range in a garment pattern, it can be quite difficult to get the same fit in different parts. So adding some kind of ribbing that pulls it in a bit more is a great way to kind of make your own adjustments if maybe the wrist is still a bit big. But I've got really small child-sized wrists, so I like to make it quite tight around my wrist because that's what I find comfortable. So ribbing's a really good way to do that.
Definitely. And I find for my my two boys.
I didn't catch that. Good.
Oh,
sorry, that was.
Is that your thing you do? Yeah. One of my boys likes really tight cuffs. He likes it really fat, and the other one does not like cuffs at all. So I have to use a different stitch for both of them, which is great. I use the same pattern, but then I just use single crochet for one and slip stitches for the other. Brilliant. So whoever you're making it for, just tailor it to them.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm just going to show off this is my balloon sleeve. So this is like super chunky sleeve. It's really big. And if you just look at the ribbon there, that's what you were talking about. Just give it a bit of a shape at the cuff. So yeah.
Yeah, look, we've got people coming in saying hello. Kira said, I loved it. Oh, Kira's just shared in my community group a hat that she's made. Everyone needs to go see it. It's awesome. She's made it while we've been doing our summit. And Michelle, you said you've been making stuff as well.
I've just finished. You want a little sneak peek? This is a brand new pattern.
Oh, we love a sneak peek. Show us.
Look at that. That's
beautiful.
I haven't sewn the ends in, obviously, but I just finished it this afternoon. So
fantastic.
Very nice. And Harriet is saying that I find ribbing frustrating. Yeah, what about it do you find frustrating? That's the thing, isn't it? How can we help? How can we help?
Use Michelle while she's here and tell us your exact frustration and maybe we can help.
Julia is asking, what stitch of ribbing would you recommend for making a turtleneck?
So I think for me, I would want, assuming a turtleneck. I know there's slightly different names for necks, but a turtleneck for me is like a roll neck, so it's quite close to the fits quite close to the neck. I like quite a lot of stretch there because I anything that's close to my neck, I like to have elasticity in it. So something that will bounce back, you know, but something that's not going to feel, you know, tight and a little bit claustrophobic. So I would probably do either a half double crochet, like I did in the video, but I would slip stitch into only 2. If I'm working it in that same method, I would only slip stitch into 2 on a turtleneck because that gives you more fabric. It also allows you to kind of double it over without it kind of sucking in. Obviously, to some extent, that depends on the width of your your shoulder seams and how much you've left for your neckline. Either that, or I would use slip stitch back loop only, which has incredible stretch. In fact, I've got,
I love it. Everyone curses me when I my
I know, but it's amazing. So I've got a hat pattern.
yeah,
this is a sample, but this is just slip stitching in. This was one that didn't quite go right, but this is just slip stitch in the back loop, and you can see the amount of stretch on there. It's incredible. Like if you want an elastic ribbing, and I know people don't like it because they don't like slip stitching, and it does take a long time, but my goodness, it's worth it.
It's it is. Harriet's replied. She said, "I can't get ribbing straight."
If it's the ends of the ribbing, so like this bit, for example, there's a couple of tips you can work. If I'm working a slip stitch ribbing like this, what I tend to do is when I turn against the working yarn. So when I make my first rib stitch, I've got another layer of yarn underneath it. That means when you go back, you can find that last stitch again. That's this is my fisherman's winter hat, and there's a video tutorial where I demonstrate that method. That will be somewhere on my YouTube channel, but it really makes it a lot easier. And the other thing, if you struggle with getting it straight, is use stitch markers, anything like that, where because I'm assuming you're losing stitches with the getting it straight, you're either gaining and you're losing, which can be really easy to do, even for me, who's been doing it for years, especially if you're working in front of the TV or something. Just stop and count every now and again and use stitch markers. That's my tips there.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Yeah.
It does have a slant on it though, doesn't it, ribbing very often? That is it just naturally happens, doesn't it? And once you block stuff as well, that's the other thing. Always block your ribbing.
Yes.
And
the slant depends a lot on your crochet style, I think. And you were talking earlier about the angle of the hook, and you can kind of change it there. It also depends on stitch height, so the actual stitch you choose can affect that slant, and also tension. So if you're using the join as you go method and you're slip stitching into maybe, I don't know, 4 stitches, 3 or 4, it's going to pull in, so you're going to get a slant. But like you say, when you've finished and you've blocked it, blocking is a really good way to get rid of a lot of those little pesky things that can happen.
Definitely.
Yeah, the slip stitch is in my opinion, and the way I work, I think the slip stitch ribbon is kind of the least forgiving. I feel like any slight change in your tension and you get like a really tight stitch in the middle of your row, it kind of really shows, doesn't it? So maybe, if you start with maybe the easier ones, like a single crochet back loop only. And what I actually do, I've got ribbon on my collar. When I get to the edge stitch here, I actually go through both loops on the very edge. So you go through the back loops up against the sort of up till the end, and then my very last stitch on the edge, I just go under both loops, and
that's a really good tip. I do that on quite a lot of my patterns as well, and I find what that does. So especially on something like a hat, if you're stretching the ribbing a lot, that helps it maintain its shape.
Yes.
So I would do that on a hat brim. I wouldn't do that on a neckline, for example, because that you want to stretch, and it can be a bit restrictive. And like I say, I'm like, don't like anything that's too restrictive. But yeah, that's a really good trick to have in your toolbox as well.
Definitely. We've got Lynn's back. Hello, Lynn.
Hello, Lynn.
Long arms and a long torso. I've learned that ribbing is a way to create a good fit. Definitely. However, I tend to use a peplum or drop waist. What's the rule of thumb for width of ribbing?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
I like that question.
I think a lot of it's down to preference. So, for example, on a cuff, you get some sweaters where the ribbing might start there and you get a really nice, long, tight cuff. You know, and you can even go longer and then fold it back over depending on what you want to achieve. To me, it's something I tend to eyeball. So if I know I want to add like a cuff at the end of the sleeve, you know, I will kind of, generally I do mine between 1.5 and 2.5 inches, I'd say.
Yeah.
But then on some garments I really want it, like I've got a cardigan called Everyday Hugs, which has got quite a lot of ribbing. It's got more of a chunky rib because I want to, and also you know, you've said, Lynn, that you've got long arms, so you might want to add a longer one, so it's kind of proportionately that same amount by the length of your arms. And also some people like ribs to kind of come over their hands, so it's really up to you.
Yeah, I would say, like, so when I was talking about choosing the pattern and stuff like that, I said to people about, you know, find stuff that you have bought from shops in your wardrobe really like the fit of, and measure those ribs, see how long the ribbing is on them, see, you know, what suits you from your existing clothes, or I would go to shops and take a tape measure with you. And
do you know what I did once? I have to show this. So the first time I was designing a pattern last year, and it had tapered armholes, and it's the first time I've really focused on the maths about tapered armholes, and I'm now at the moment working on a cardigan which is going to have cap sleeve as well. So I was looking at the maths from the Craft Yarn Council you mentioned. I was like, that seems like a lot to have kind of there, that, you know, that fabric, is that really right? I went into Marks and Spencer's and I picked up a size 8 and a size 18 vest top, and I went into the change rooms and I measured them. And I looked to myself, I was like, I don't have a life like ordinary people.
What's I doing?
Like,
I mean, at least you did it in a changing room, you know, a bit strange on the shop floor, kind of, yeah.
I always take my children know that whenever I'm shopping, if I'll take a photo of something, whatever, my boys will be like, "Mummy, you're going to make that?" And I'm like,
oh, and going up escalators and seeing people in knitwear coming down and go, "Oh, I like that they've done that." Yeah, I like to stare at people when I see something that makes,
and I'm like, I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at your jumper.
Exactly that.
I'm not being rude. Harriet's asking, can slip stitch back loop replace foundation crochet?
What you mean by
they're different
replace?
I think that would be not.
Can you make a foundation? Do you mean like a chainless foundation row? Is that what you mean? Because you could make a slip stitch foundation row. I've never done it, but I imagine
do it, couldn't you? Though
it's possible.
It wouldn't be very flexible, though. I have to say that would be quite.
Yeah.
So you can. The answer is probably you can.
I mean, you can
take into account that it won't be very stretchy. If that's what you're looking for, something that doesn't stretch, then that's
and generally slip stitches. So in Joanne's video, she was talking about changing the fabric density. So slip stitches just don't stretch very much along between the stitches. So there's a lot of stretch between the rows, but not much there. So that's a function that you can totally use to your advantage in all different places. So for example, on a cardigan, I will often run when I'm doing the button band, run a row of slip stitches, because it means over time that resists gravity. You know, don't talk about it a lot, but gravity can impact your garments, you know, as you wear them and they get longer, especially if they're heavy garments. So thinking about that when you're making the design and just adding those little features. I think Joanne also mentioned the faux seam up the side, like that kind of thing can add structure where just like help long term.
Definitely. Sorry, I'm reading as I'm clicking. There we are. Thank you, tutorial. Wondering if you have any tips for turning corners with ribbing, or like cardigans, etc.
That can be a tricky one. what I would do, so say for example, I don't know, say I had a sort of square neck. So this is like a raglan V-neck top down. So say I wanted to add like a ribbed collar. I think what I would do, and actually this is something I'm going to be exploring on my next design, is to when you're doing the slip stitching, is to kind of slip stitch in a wider number. So you kind of, so say this was the kind of corner, I'm not going to do this, and so you could slip stitch into 3 over the corner, and that will come to 1 point there. So it will kind of almost like a decrease, almost like a 3 together, but you're working at right angles. For V-necks, my sneaky way is to actually just do an overlap. So I've got a stash busting pattern called Waste Not Want Not. There's a video on my channel, and it's basically it's more of a recipe than a full-on pattern. I just got all my stash and made this, but I used that technique on the neckline there. So I've kind of got the ribbing coming down there, and then I go all around the neck, and then overlap it on the other side and join it up. And it's kind of a sneaky way to get around all that problem, really. But I also, there's a lot more examples of changing your tension and playing with your tension, kind of following on from what I discussed in that video.
I think the overlap method often looks neater. If you try and fight, because it never looks quite.
Because the other way to do it at V-neck is kind of to use sort of short rows, which I think if you're using like a 4-ply yarn and pay really close attention, you can make it work. I think the thicker your yarn, the more sort of clumsy it can kind of look, because you have fewer stitches. So
yeah, I've done little short rows on my V-neck, the Tunisian that I wore a couple of lives back. So that had short rows in a V-neck. So yeah, there is a way, but yeah, that's getting a bit technical. With
but that Tunisian, that used fairly fine yarn, if I remember.
It's a 4-ply, yeah. So yeah, it still stays pliable. Yeah, it sits well, but yeah, I can see how a thicker yarn would be a bit of it might like a pucker, so you end up with with a little tent.
Catch all your crisps in when you're watching.
Yes. Why not? I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Here we go. There's one saying, do you need to have your garment inside out? Is what they mean when adding ribbing.
Well, if you're doing it in rows, you're kind of going to work on the wrong side and the right side. Generally, I would work with it on the inside out, because it sort of protects the right side. So, you know, when I'm seaming and doing finishing stuff, I generally tend to work with it wrong side facing, but you will be turning both ways. But yeah, I think as a general rule of thumb, it just protects, you know, any little pulls. Like I've got broke my nail earlier and like caught on the yarn. It's just like
snag it. It's so annoying.
So I'd rather snag the inside than the outside.
That's it.
I've got someone saying here, I've always struggled with ribbing. I tend to avoid it until now. This lesson really helped.
Yay! Give it a go.
Awesome to hear. Yeah, it's like all the things we've been talking about. It's like they are really scary until you have a bit more knowledge and a bit more confidence and just have a go. And like people trying stuff, you might make mistakes. You have a go at ribbing, and I'm sure you will miss stitches, because I have definitely and still do. But that's okay. That's absolutely fine. The important point is to have a go.
Yeah.
And build that confidence. Keep building that confidence.
You can just pull it out. Like if you're not confident about something, just make sure you're using a yarn that's easy to frog. Like, you know, you're not going to try it for the first time with mohair or something, but you know, like that's the worst that can happen. You pull it out, you've learned how not to do ribbing, so it's fine.
Just have another go. Exactly. And then Bernice, so long up. Bernice is basically saying thank you very much. Can't thank everyone enough involved. Been crocheting for over 40 years, but not many garments. So hopefully now you'll get. And she says she's following lots of new designers and people. Yay. So that's awesome to hear.
Fantastic. Yay.
And I second that. You two have been fabulous. So.
Thank
you. Thank you. Well, so have you. We couldn't have done it without everyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely. And then saying that Karen saying, I like that tip with the back loop. Awesome. We like that. We like to share our tips. That's the thing. We're creative people, aren't we? We want to share all of this with everyone.
And like when you find a new way to do something, and
I know you're like, oh, come and do.
So excited. It's like I need to show someone.
Thank you so much. Oh, they're popping in so quickly. Oh, this is interesting. I've usually ended up knitting ribbing onto my crochet sweaters if it wasn't written into the pattern. Definitely makes me feel more confident in adding crochet ribbing.
Definitely. And actually, a friend of mine, so her Instagram is FadeH Designs, and she used to run the Crochet Circle podcast. She has a blog post all about adding knit ribbing to crochet and vice versa. I think vice versa, but she shows you loads of different ways to do it. So if the only way you can do ribbing is to add knit ribbing to crochet, do it. Like, you know, but there's a great blog post that Faye's got. She's got all swatches of all the different options. So yeah, explore with that. I think, like, I don't really knit, like, I'm very, very basic knitter, but I think combining the two crafts is just genius. I think you were talking about yesterday, was it Brianna talking yesterday about adding bobbles with a crochet hook and knitting?
Yeah.
It's like, like, there's no rule that says you can't mix them, go for it.
My mum forever and ever has added crochet around blankets. She'll crochet a border around a knitted blanket.
Yeah.
She's just like, it's much quicker. I don't have to get in stitches and go round and stuff. So she crochets round. Yeah. Fantastic. And then it is completely unique as well. That's the other thing that we've come across. That's the theme running through the weekend, isn't it? That it's so lovely to make things completely unique to you.
Exactly.
Go for it. Yeah, Harriet saying, for square raglan sleeves, any tips to have the front layer flatter and at what rate to reduce?
So I tend to work raglans top down. So this would be relating to those. You can add short rows if you have issues with, you know, the front being higher than the back, or vice versa. The stitch rate or the rate of reduction. So if you're working top down and then coming in, so the raglan is literally just the seam that goes from the underarm to the neckline. It really depends on where your neckline is, what angle you want. So this I don't know if you can see that the raglan seam is there.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite a shallow seam.
Yeah.
Because it's like very tight on the shoulders, but it's loads of space in the body that, so you can sort of see it there. So it's not a 45-degree angle. So the decrease rate is going to depend on what angle you want. So you know, if you want something that's coming quite far into the neck, you're going to want a steeper angle, but this is quite a wide neckline, so I've got quite a shallow angle. So I can't give you an exact answer to that, other than to say think about where you want it to go. And raglans, and it made me laugh, you were talking about your raglan sweater that you'll have a work in progress. For me, raglans are the most difficult to design in adult multiple sizes, because you get to a size and you essentially have to redo them. So
you have to start again, don't you? Yeah.
But it's so worth doing, and it's because they're so lovely to make, but from the design side there's a lot that goes into it. And I've also found that to make something look really simple is really complicated. But I love it, because my job is to do the heavy lifting as a designer, so that you as a maker can just follow the instructions and go, and then say, well, actually I want more space under the sleeve, so I'm going to increase that underarm chain, or, you know, what have you. It's like, and I'm with you on the adjusting patterns. And I think half the battle, I told you I'd talk forever, didn't I? Half the battle with garments is working out how to make adjustments that work for you, because we use sizing standards, but none of us are actually standard sizing, or a very small minority. So, like, learn to adjust, learn what you like, learn the techniques you like that you don't like, change your rib stitch, you know, do it so it's something you want to wear.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is to not expect too much of yourself straight away. Like, if you're just starting it out and you're it probably won't. If it goes right, then you're just very, very lucky.
Do you know what else I would say, actually? Because the first garment I ever made, it was as part of a garment cowl, and it was a Crochet Simplicity, and Jennifer, who runs Crochet Simplicity, is an incredible designer, and her cowl was so well thought out that it was a perfect fit. Like, I'd never gauged before, I'd never done anything like that before. So if you are a bit nervous, join a garment cowl. It's a really good way to have people to ask.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, join communities. That's what I'm saying. And find designers that are accessible, that you can find online, that you can message, that you can talk to. because, and again, hopefully that's what this weekend is showing, like we're all just normal people just working hard to bring our creativeness to you, and we love it so much. So we really love it when people come and ask us questions.
Yeah, and if I can do a quick plug, if anybody does want help, I have a Facebook group called My Crochet Wardrobe, which is literally dedicated to people that want to crochet garments. So it's a private group, so it's, you know, complete safe space. There's no stupid questions. So if anybody wants me to ask questions, you know, outside of this summit, come over and join the Facebook group. And it's called My Crochet Wardrobe. So if you just type My Crochet Wardrobe into Facebook, there's a few joining and questions. So make sure you just keep the bots out. So make sure you answer the joining questions. And then we can hopefully help you there.
Gabriella, we've got a vote for it. Group. Yay! We're running out of time again. Pam just got here. It's May to tighten ribbing around the wrist. Can you or should you do half double crochet one way and double crochet or single crochet coming back the other way?
That is one way to do it. And actually, like, have a play, see if you like what it looks like, because with that you'll need to think about right and wrong sides, because you'll probably get a slightly different rib on each side. And again, if you're doing it that way and if you're working join as you go, then you'll need to think about how many crochet stitches you slip stitch into. If you're working the ribbing first and then crocheting into it, again, you'll need to think about the cadence of how you add your sleeve into the row ends.
Definitely. Yeah, it'll need to be an even Stevens, wouldn't it, to get it right? It'll meet wrong, won't it?
Yeah. So you definitely need an even number of rows as well.
But good idea. I love this. People are coming up with
it's one simple way. If you need to tighten ribbon around your wrist, I would say try to drop down the hook size as well. Maybe try that at first before you start complicating maybe things. Just try a smaller hook and see whether that actually is tight enough for you.
And often, actually, somebody asked that about the smaller hook during the video. That's a really common thing people do, because you get a really nice, if you have that tighter, more dense fabric, that kind of slight knit look rib looks really nice in a sort of tighter fabric. And the other thing I was going to say is, what you could do is you could work around with single crochet on the end of your sleeve and just put some decreases in, just to kind of give you a bit of a head start. And that, well, I wasn't sure if you'd done that on your sleeve, Veronica, because I wasn't sure if you'd done that before you did the ribbing.
There is a row of I think I went like every other decrease. I can't remember, it's somewhere in a pattern, but
it's in the pattern.
This is definitely pulled in, and the ribbons added after.
The other thing is, so my ribs are there because they're worked in rows, these sleeves, they're just shorter stitches. And just done much shorter stitches than in the body of the sleeve. So again, it comes down to the construction. If you're working in a different direction, your ribs might be added within the pattern. But also I've got another pattern that I changed. It's done side to side, but I changed the hook size for the ribbing, which lots of it, my testers were like, you want me to work in one hook and then change to another one? I was like, yeah, it works.
In the middle of a row.
I was like, honestly, it works.
But like, that's such an underused technique. Like, playing with hook size is such a great way to kind of change things up. I've got a star stitch shawl pattern, and it's made in like fingering weight yarn, but I've used a 7mm hook, so it creates a totally different stitch fabric. And star stitch, that's usually really dense, it has the amazing drape. So playing with hook size, like, not to be underestimated.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at time.
Oh, it goes so quick.
I know. Oh,
thank you guys. Thanks for bringing us all together this weekend. It's been fabulous.
Thank you for coming. I'll put this up here because we are ready to hop over to our very, very last video, which is Michelle from MJ's Off the Hook talking about styling. So we've made everything. Now we need to know how to wear it. And my goodness, does she know how to wear it? So pop over, watch that, and then come back, and we'll see you for our very final live of the summit. I'm getting a bit emotional.
I know. This is not But thanks you so much, Michelle. Thank you for joining us. It's been amazing.
Bye.